Okay, all right. So let's start with the background to all this. So what we are seeing at the moment is a new wave of immigration to the United Kingdom. I think people sometimes are surprised that there have been other waves. And, you know, in my research, there have been five waves of immigration to the UK. I'm talking particularly from Zimbabwe. So the first one would have been pre-1980, just before independence, you know, as the war was raging. And then post-1980, the white flight. And then around 1982, 1983, the Ndebeles, you know, around the Kukurahundi issues. And then in the 2000s, as the economy tanked, we saw a lot of movement. And then lately around 21, 22 with this new visa. So mass movements of Zimbabweans to the United Kingdom. And the background of the latest migration wave is that on 1st December 2020, the UK government introduced what's known as the skilled work visa system. Now, part of that was something called the shortage occupation jobs, which are something that the Migration Advisory Committee comes up with. And they recommend.
Can everyone else hear Taffi, or is it just me?
No.
No.
I think you're breaking up.
Okay, we will resolve it in a second. Just bear with us a moment. We'll resolve that in a second. So Taffi will dial you in to ensure that they can hear you. And if you can mute yourself on your main devices. So Prim, if you can take over, please. Thanks. We won't be long. We just need to dial him in so that his audio can work.
Is that working?
Yeah, it seems to be working now, but we'll dial you in anyway to ensure that we don't lose you again. Thanks.
Okay. Do you want me to proceed or just wait a bit?
I think let's proceed. If we fail again, at least we'll have the alternative ready to go. Thanks.
All right, fantastic. I think I've got a call.
WebEx. Press 1 to be connected to your meeting.
Okay. All right.
Welcome to WebEx. Press 1 to be connected to your meeting.
Hello, sorry about that. Shall we proceed? Okay. So I was giving the background. Is that working?
It is, but you just might need to reduce the volume on your phone because we can also hear your phone.
All right. Okay. I don't know if that's better now.
Okay. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. All right. So I was giving the background to the latest migration wave to the United Kingdom, and I was saying that there have been 5 waves, actually. There was one pre-1980 because of the war. There was one post-1980 as the white flight took place. And then in the 1982-1983 period, the Gukurahundi, we saw a lot of Ndebeles leave. And then the 2000s as the economy tanked, and then lately 2021 and 2022. So the one that we are seeing now is just the latest wave of migration from Zimbabwe. And I gave as the background the introduction of the skilled work visa system that came in on the 1st of December 2020. And as you can see there in my slide, it lists the different occupations by SOC code. And the one that we are talking about, the care jobs, is part of that system. Next slide, please. Okay. Now, 4 things that are important, or 4 things that came in with the new changes. There was something called the resident labor market test, which was eliminated with the new changes. Now, prior to the new changes or the new scheme, if you were an employer, you needed to demonstrate that you could not find anyone locally before you went abroad. So that's been eliminated. An employer can simply go abroad and recruit. So that's critical. And then secondly, the removal of caps on numbers. So employers used to have a cap you know, in terms of the numbers that they could bring in. That's gone. So you can bring in as many employees as your organization requires. And that's key. And that's been a game changer. And then, of course, number 3, it's applicable to everybody, including Europeans. So, and that's courtesy of Brexit. And then number 4, it's a speedier and a more streamlined process. So it's cheaper, it's quicker. It takes about 3 weeks to get a visa if you're applying under the new scheme. Next slide. And then, particularly with the K-Work visa that came in for August 2021, it was introduced by recommendation of the Migrant Advisory Committee. Now, what you need to note is that care work is actually not a skilled job. I know someone mentioned this and made a comment about it being actually skilled. It's not. It's you know, more of a manual job, but it was introduced to address the historical shortages in the sector, and that's critical to understand. Next slide. Then on 15 February 2022, there was an introduction of what we call so-called 4165. So it introduced a whole range of other jobs. So prior to that, you could only bring in senior care workers. Now you can bring in all sorts of carers, you know, from care assistants, carers, home care assistants, home carers, support workers. And more importantly, there's been an introduction of a 1-year care work visa, and that's again a game changer. Next slide. That's an eagle's view of the changes that have come. Next slide. Now, the advantages, as I've mentioned, it's a very cheap process. Only costs £247 to do a visa application. You can bring your entire family. It leads to settlement in 5 years. The employer can certify maintenance, eliminating the need to demonstrate that you've got your own funds. There's no immigration health surcharge, so you save up to £3,000. And employers also are seeing a reduced bill because of the 1-year visa. So typically you only pay as an employer £364. And then, of course, it's a low-skill visa route. That means anybody, you know, can apply subject to passing an English test. And but that also presents challenges, which I'm going to talk about now. Next slide, please. So these are the challenges. Now, obviously, starting point is that because it's opened up to all sorts of people, and it's meant to be low-skilled. But what we have witnessed or observed is this, that a lot of the people that are coming to the UK are actually middle class, you know, educated people, professionals who can afford and who can pass the test. So even though it's meant for really low-skilled personnel, it's attracting middle classes. And obviously, when they come to the UK, they've got expectations. They are not really carers, most of them, and that's where a lot of the problems start. A lot of them are waiting for something better to come along. They have huge expectations. And of course, this has been mentioned, a lot of the companies that bring in these people are not giant care companies. They're just small family-run organizations with limited budgets. And then, of course, if you look at the typical spend per employee, you know, if you try to bring in someone, you're looking at almost 3K. If you bring 10 people, that's 30K easy, you know. Next slide. And then, of course, some issues that have come across, employers bring in, employers bring in people and they discover these people are pregnant or people have misled them that they can actually drive when they can't. And then there's a lot of interference by UK-based relatives. Then there's the culture shock aspect to all this, inability to cope with long hours. And I talked about the high expectations. People think you come here and earn loads and loads of money. And actually, in reality, life in the UK can be quite difficult. It tends to be hand to mouth in a lot of cases. And then, of course, childcare challenges. Next slide. Then revolving door, this affects employers. A lot of people come and go, so within the sector, people switch employers and, people moving across sectors to other, employment opportunities. And then there's a new phenomenon, you know, the social media naming and shaming. And we've seen this a lot of times in the Zimbabwean community, where people like to go on social media and name people. And I have actually come across employers who say, I will never employ another Zimbabwean, you know, and that's just some of the results of this phenomenon. And then I have to mention the UK political environment. You know, it's quite easy to forget that because of this new scheme, which is easy, which is cheap, and it looks like the UK government is being very generous. In fact, there's a lot of hostility towards immigrants, and this is something that people have to come to terms with. Next slide. And okay, I can't. Okay, next slide. Right. So summary. I occupy a dual position. I represent a lot of employers, so companies, we're applying for sponsor licenses, doing audits, structuring contracts, and so on. But I also have a lot of clients who are employees. So a lot of times there's that conflict, and I have to try and resolve that, you know, in my day-to-day work. And usually what I do personally is to recommend mediation, because whilst employees have rights, and we've heard from a union representative, and they've got rights by law, by employment law, and all this, employers also have rights, you know, and they have contractual rights. They've got litigation options, and we hear a lot of people, you know, just leaving jobs without giving notice, and all this, and there are implications for that. But whilst they have those options, what I try to do a lot of times is to see if we can reach a consensus through mediation. And finally, last slide. And that's just to thank you. And my contacts are there, my email, my phone number, and where you can find me on Facebook, on TikTok, and on LinkedIn. But thank you to my hosts, and thank you for having me.